Do you hate Nazis and your guidance counselor equally? Want to stand up for your beliefs but not really be held accountable for your actions? You sound like our type. Hi, I'm Name Redacted, Senior Vice President of Antifa, and much like Mom's new boyfriend, fascism won't go away without a fight. So grab your fixed gear bike and come aboard. Find a recruiting station at the smoking circle out back of your old high school, that weird castle-looking thing in the woods, or any hot topic. Join us, as long as you don't live in Portland, or you're willing to move out of Portland, because seriously, we are all full there.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Electoral Dysfunction, the show where comedians and experts debate the news of the week from the safety of their quarantine. I'm your host, Tom Brennan. Quick thank you to our friends Daryl Charles and James Heskey from the Layoff Kids for that opening sketch. And hey, this is our 25th show. 25 shows. We did it, guys. 25 times have I sat in this chair and said, what's happening in the world, and 25 times have a group of brilliant comedians, writers, pundits, musicians, thinkers, yellers, veterans, real yellers, all of them generally liberal, hopped on Zoom with me to help me sort the world out. I'm really proud of the work we've done, and I want to thank everyone who's been a part of this show so far. If you want to thank anyone who's been a part of this show so far, head on over to patreon.com/electoral dysfunction and donate a little change their way. 100% of the money that you send will go to the people who do this show. I will not keep a dime. Other little bit of housekeeping here at the top. I was a guest on this week's episode of DTF, the Daryl and Timmery Fun Hour, hosted by friends of this show, Daryl Charles and Dr. Timmery Schmidt. Go check that out wherever you get your podcasts. And with that, Ned Thorne, let's get to the 25th panel, huh? Star wipe me to the show. Join me in welcoming this week's panel. First up, we're really excited to have her making her Electoral Dysfunction debut. She's the host of the Light Treason News podcast, Allison Kilkenny. Hey, Allison, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Next up, very funny comedian and writer. You can see her work right now on Netflix on Astronomy Club, and she's also writer of the upcoming reboot of Spitting Image, Keisha Zoller. Hey, Keisha, how are you?
Good.
Excellent. Another very funny gentleman, host of the Political Orphanage podcast and Alienating the Audience, which I was lucky enough to be a guest on a few weeks ago when we talked about supervillains.
We nerded out. My virginity grew back. It was so nerdy.
Yep. I can't believe it happened live on the air. Andrew Heaton, how are you, my friend?
Very good. Good to be back, Tom.
Good to see you. And of course, editorial columnist for the New York Daily News, the voice of New York City himself, Robert George. Robert, how are you?
I'm doing well, Tom. Thank you very much. Great to see everybody once again. And great to meet Allison. So this is fantastic.
Yes, you as well.
History made. Kamala Harris will be the Democratic Party's vice presidential nominee in 2020. Only the fourth woman to be on a national ticket and the first woman of color to be on a national ticket for a major party. Anyway, all due respect to our friends in the Green and Libertarian. So history made, and barring a major change in the world, and it is 2020, so knocking on wood for him, it will be Trump Pence versus Biden Harris this fall. So I think there's three ways to look at the story of the announcement of Kamala Harris, and I think it is there. I think the most important thing to start from is it is a historic choice. Like this is history was made this week, and I think it is worth diving into that first. And go ahead.
We all agree. We all agree.
Great. Moving on.
Exactly.
Talk about Watchmen.
By the way, since we were talking about minor parties too, I do feel for some reason the urge to point out that when Pat Buchanan ran on the reform ticket in either 96 or 2000 or whatever it was.
He picked Kamala Harris as his running mate.
He actually picked a black California woman, I forget her name, as his running mate. So, you know, Pat Buchanan, trailblazer. Who knew?
You know, it's a big thing for old Irish Catholic white men who have said horrible things.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Try and make up for their mistakes.
Don't talk about my family when I'm a guest on the show, Tom. Cool.
Tom, can I step in and irritate everybody? Can I do that?
Go ahead, Andrew Heaton, do it. That's why we brought you on.
Andrew, you don't even have to step in to irritate everybody. You know,
oh, thank you. I can just remain seated to do it.
Yeah.
I would prefer that the Democrats take this election. I don't like Trump. I don't like Pence. But I am slightly worried by the fact that so much of the conversation is about Kamala Harris's identity. And for example, during the primaries, no one particularly liked her. Like, my guess is, I could be wrong, but my guess is everybody here, probably with the exception of George, probably was more enthused about Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And she dropped out. And at the time, dropped out before Iowa. At the time, the media was, now there's no one of color on stage, but no one could bring a policy that was a part of her legacy. That was not the emphasis for her. And right now, so much of it is the identity, and not so much of it is policies that she's favored and things like that. And I worry that that's going to be more flash in the pan, that it's going to have actual staying power.
I'm going to push back and say, welcome to America. That's always been the case. That's been the thing of 2020, the people marching in the streets. America's racial coming to Jesus moment is here. And I think I hear the flash in the pan argument, but we're literally on the precipice of our country tearing itself apart over race. So I don't think that's something that will be over. It's the same thing of we elect Kamala, racism isn't over. We have to learn those mistakes of Obama. So I would push back, because people are literally in the streets over race. And so although it is not the only thing she stands for, she has a voting history and policy she's behind, but we're at a weird intersection where we've never been post-racial. We have no hope of being post-racial. The only thing we're about to be is post-existence. So I'm excited about Kamala, because the race aspect is we have large voting blocks of people of color who aren't exercising their rights. And I am excited, not just that she's a Black woman, but that she's a South Asian woman. And to have that immigrant story told from a person of color vantage point, participating in democracy and up for the highest role in the land, I'm stoked for that. That energizes immigrants, that energizes people of color who've been invisible and literally are tearing shit apart because we've been so unseen. So I would push back, because 2020 has been a vibe.
Yeah, I don't think the optics are necessarily superficial. In fact, I think it was deliberate on Biden's part.
Oh, sure, yeah.
He's very much aware that he's the past of the Democratic Party. And he was like, I really need a running mate who represents, even if it's just with optics, the future of the Democratic Party. So, yeah, I agree with Keisha. She's interesting, too, where, if you look at her voting record, she's actually one of the most liberal senators. So that's interesting, because I feel like she is sort of clocking the moment and evolving in real time. Whether you think that's moral or not is beside the point. Because again, she did horrible things when.
Yeah, I got it. She's very liberal as a senator. That's true. She's been very good on immigration. I will say throughout her career, she's been very much in favor of gay marriage and rights for anybody in LGBTQ, and hats off to her for that. She was
pot legalization, stuff like that.
Well, no, she's not been in favor of pot legalization. That's something that she's embraced as a senator, but she was a drug warrior as a prosecutor.
But that's what I mean. She's evolving in real time. And
I think that's fine. And actually, I don't even have a problem if it's out of political expediency, because I like the stuff that she's jumped ship on. And whether she's doing it out of pragmatism for her political career or out of any type of ideological evolution. I don't really care as long as the law reflects that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, what I would where I would agree and disagree with Brother Andrew is that a lot of, as you said, a lot of the focus has been on her identity, less so much on her ideology or her issues and so forth. Number one, in basically before 1980 or so, the considerations that went into selecting a vice president were most often about geography. You know, if somebody can help me with voters in this state or that region, and so forth. After 1980, that calculus changed, and particularly, and most particularly with actually, surprisingly enough, with starting with George H.W. Bush.
Actually, now I'm going to stop you right there. I would say more starting in 1976 with Walter Mondale, but continue your point.
Well, yeah, but Mondale was sort of in between.
Sorry,
there
guys. This is one of these classic Mondale fights.
I would like to bring up James K. Polk because I feel that we are really, really jumping over some historical moments here.
Mondale, Carter selected Mondale partly because Carter was from the South. He wanted the Midwest, and yes, there was the idea that Carter was the outsider. Mondale was kind of very much an establishment figure. But the point I was trying to make is basically since 1988 and then into 1992, the selection of the vice president was about a particular message, broadly speaking, that the presidential candidate wanted to send to the electorate, showing a certain kind of a balance that was beyond geography. So George H.W. Bush, old guard, decides to pick baby boomer Dan Quayle, trying to show that the Republican Party was the kind of the party of the future. Yes, that blew up.
Dan Quayle was the vanguard of the future of America.
That blew up in his face when Bill Clinton, a Southern moderate baby boomer, picks Al Gore, a Southern moderate baby boomer. It's reinforcing this message of them being, of the new generation that's coming into power. So to that extent, Biden, by selecting Kamala Harris, as Allison said, Biden is actually, by a couple of years, is actually pre-boomer. He's like silent generation. So this would be rather,
really
ironic.
If he ironic. If he actually wins, it would be, generationally speaking, it would be remarkable that a country and a culture decided to do that much of a throwback. But given the times, that might warrant it. So I think that's what Biden is doing. The other thing is to going back maybe to James Polk. I don't know, but hardly anybody really gives a damn what the vice presidential candidate thinks ideologically. Their job ideologically is to get behind the ticket, get behind the person at the top, and not screw up.
Yeah, well, I'd say like jumping off that point, like identity, you could argue identity in many ways has always sort of defined the vice president, and particularly like, the big knock on George W. Bush and Barack Obama was that they didn't have a ton of experience in Washington and a ton of foreign policy experience. And so they picked people who identified as old white men.
I would even say it's true for like even the losers, right? Like I think of Sarah Palin, who
exactly that's
pops back. Like she is represents the times.
Yeah.
Can I ask, do you all like one of the concerns I have is, I think to go back to the 90s that Robert was alluding to, the political stratagem used to be there are the Democrats, there's the Republicans, and there's a swing vote of moderates, and we have to capture the moderates. And I think I'm like the very last one. Everybody else is dead. My time as kingmaker is done. I get that.
Yeah.
And so now the game is we have to motivate the base. We have to excite the base. We don't care about the independents. We don't care about the moderates. We want to just get the Democrats to come out and vote. One of my concerns is that was not something that Kamala Harris did during the primaries. I mean, she didn't even make it to Iowa. So is this I'm worried that energy wasn't there and that it might not manifest, because I would like the Democrats to prevail. What do you guys think?
This is big for you, first of all, to acknowledge that. Go ahead, Allison. Sorry.
I know there's all this like worry about people not supporting the Biden-Harris ticket and that like the lefties will stay home. Nobody motivates Democrats like Trump. So even if they're not excited about a Biden-Harris ticket, I mean,
the
Democrats,
anti-Trump vote will prevail regardless of who's on the
liberals
ticket.
Hate Trump. Like
I've heard that. I have read that on Twitter.
Like it is wild how much he motivates people. So even if like people are like lackluster about the ticket, I really, really think people just turn out to vote against him.
I also think you can't underestimate the power of seeing Black people on a ticket. Mm-hmm. I think we can't underestimate that, and we can't underestimate like a mainly passive vote of South Asian voters in this country. And there's a lot of South Asian Americans who haven't necessarily been participating, and other Asian Americans. So it's exciting to potentially get people to vote for the first time, like we did with Obama in 2008. And I think there is a conversation of like that swing vote. So even though it might not be regionally like advantageous to pick a Kamala, I think racially it could, like, to see people being like, oh, maybe I could be a part of the political process for the first time in their lives. I think
and I would,
there's a way to capture that energy. I mean, look at Doug Jones and the Alabama Black women, or yeah.
Well, and I think jumping up to that, just to your point, Andrew, you said like it's a base election. The base of the Democratic Party is Black voters. And a big thing you saw a lot of in coverage of the primary was Black voters would get asked, like, this is, news coverage, not necessarily polling that I'm thinking of. They get asked what they thought about Kamala Harris or Cory Booker, and they liked them a lot, but would constantly say, but I think Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders can win this thing. So I think like you have a base that kind of was already on board with the candidate. And now this is a message to that base. Hey, thanks for your support.
But the person, the person who is arguably the MVP of this election cycle, Jim Clyburn, he delivered South Carolina to Joe Biden and turned everything around and said, this is the guy, and Jim Clyburn's base. Black women and other African Americans in the state all decide to go and support and overwhelmingly support Clyburn, and that gets the dominoes rolling through the rest of the primary. And Clyburn then says to Biden, "Well, I think you should probably put a Black woman on the ticket." Wink, wink. And Joe Biden says, this is the guy who saved my political career. Perhaps I should give him a listen to there. But the other issue is what Kamala Harris. Everybody had been mispronouncing her name forever. She checks the box of a Black woman, but she's Asian American. Indian mother. She's West Indian with her Jamaican father, which and there's a significant community in Florida. Yes, Florida that appeals to. And by the way, there are a number of Indian communities throughout a lot of these swing states: Michigan, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and so forth. So it's one of those things where it's a history-making, bold selection, which also makes a heck of a lot of sense politically. And yes, she's also appealing not just to the base, but as Keisha said, to those voters who had not yet necessarily awoken politically, but say, oh, there's one of us up there.
So let's talk. We've talked a little bit about it. Let's move over just very quickly to talking about her record, because Allison rightly picked up, like, I think she's maybe, if not it was like the third most liberal senator in the Senate, something like that on voting record. And of course, that has come out, as Andrew alluded to. It's been put in comparison with her time as Attorney General for the state of California, where it's fair to say, it's a generous reading would say a mixed record. And I think like I'm of two minds as myself. I think we kind of I have, without forgiving politicians, which I refuse to do, I can't appreciate that it is easier when you are the member of a legislative body. You have a little more freedom than when you run, a state or the Justice Department of a state or something like that. You have a little more freedom to just be like, I believe this, I'm voting this way.
You can also cast a number of symbolic votes that don't have any force of law and sort of stake your position out in terms of where your values are, as opposed to having to prosecute people, which has real effect.
Well, I also think it's important
decisions.
I think it's important to remember, like, when she was coming up in California too. It was a time when, as a Democrat, you actually couldn't get elected to office unless you were quote unquote tough on crime, which I mean was bad, but like that's how Bill Clinton became president. Like truly every single Democrat was doing it, or you could not get elected. Again, not excusing her or anything, but like I have a feeling that is why she has continued to evolve with her policies and ideologies, because she now has the support where she can become more liberal.
Yeah,
I suspect that's right, Allison. I mean, like you're absolutely correct. At the time when she entered politics, it was not at all a good idea to be a Democrat and be against the death penalty. Al Gore was very much upfront. He was in favor of the death penalty. John Kerry wasn't in favor of the death penalty, and then he ran for president. And he went, except for terrorists, kill the terrorists. Like Bill Clinton. Like Bill Clinton flew down when he was running for president. He flew down to Arkansas to watch a guy that was
Ray Rector, I think.
Was mentally disabled be executed so that he could appear in an op-ed for that. And he also, like as governor, said, "Yep, kill the guy with a brain problem."
Yeah.
So
by the way,
that is true.
Just to tell you how awful that was, I want to say Ray Rector, and I'll double check it before we get off before we finish this up. This individual who was, as Andrew said, so brain damaged. He was given his last meal, and he ate his entree, and the person handed him his and he said, "I'll eat it later, thank you." I mean, like true story. I mean, that's
verified. Yeah. So there was
terrible.
That was the environment coming up. Although I kind of throw out my read on Kamala Harris, like many politicians, is that she is a very ambitious politician. And so when I look at her record, I see
dangerously so. If you're Chris Dodd,
I see a very practical, and I mean, or I should say expedient. I see someone who adopts expedient positions to further their career first, and a progressive second.
Yes.
Now, I'm not so much against that, because that means that she has the ability to pivot if public support, say for like drug laws, changes, because she was a drug warrior, and now she's come around and she's sort of retconning herself as like this criminal justice reformer, which is absolutely not true. Now, if she's doing it, terrific. But she was cracking down on drugs. She was against legalizing marijuana. Now she's in favor of it, though, which is awesome, because Joe Biden is not in favor of it. And so I'm glad that there's somebody on the ticket that's dragging the Democratic Party into the 21st century.
That's the thing.
Ricky Ray Rector, by the way, was the guy on death row. Yes.
I want to just push back a little bit. I think, Andrew, you're right. Certainly, I would agree that her time as Attorney General, not necessarily like a profile and courage for all things, criminal justice reform. She does have a record. She as Attorney General for the state, increased transparency in terms of police and in terms of their police records, which is a thing that matters. And was against, I believe, was against always, like there was against always pushing the death penalty for people who killed
she's on in that capacity. She's been rhetorically against the death penalty consistently, but when the death penalty was thrown out by the California Supreme Court, she filed, as Attorney General, she filed a brief or a statement, I don't remember. It basically said, they should not have done that. We need to have this option on the books, when she was running for re-election. And
Yeah.
I don't know, charitably, it could be that she looked at it and said, even though I agree with the policy that they're promulgating, it doesn't actually line up constitutionally. I kind of think that it was her trying to court police unions and things like that.
Probably both, yeah.
She went after Backpage when she was running for Senate in 2016.
That was bad. That was bad.
Yeah, and like I looked through this and I'm like, we're all on board with stopping trafficking. We're all very much on board with stopping trafficking. But it was like it was going off of stuff that she previously said was not something you could actually prosecute. It became a very high profile piece. And
also,
and
the damage she did to my dating life, right
yeah,
there.
you can't go on. You can't hire escorts anymore.
I mean, what the heck is with that?
But she got a really big bang for it in terms of publicity, and then it fell apart. But she got the Senate seat out of it. So I
no longer got a big bang from it, though.
All right, Allison, go ahead. I swear to God, Robert.
So often when they're going after trafficking, it's just punishing sex workers. It's like child trafficking is completely different than what sex workers were using Backpage for.
Right. You own your body. If you want to engage in a consensual act with somebody, whether it's for love, for fun, or for money, I 100% support you.
I'm going to quickly call out that on his other podcast on Political Orphanage, Andrew, I believe, is campaigning for the vice presidency on the Whig Party.
Yes.
A lot of Oppo research you've done, I've noticed.
I should just full disclosure here. Yeah. I was kind of hoping Joe Biden would select me on a unity ticket. And my goal was, I'm just so you guys know, I'm running for vice president as a Whig, but I'm not running with a presidential running mate. I'm just running as vice president. There's no one at the top of the ticket. I'm probably only running in Louisiana, if that. And I was hoping that Kanye West and Joe Biden would simultaneously put me on their ticket as a vice president, and I'd run on 3 parties. And so far, it is not coming through. So I do have a little bit of a chip on my shoulder at Kamala Harris.
I'll wish you best of luck. Keisha, please, you were about to say something.
All I was going to say is we've touched on like the political and national climate in which Kamala came up. I think it's really important to contextualize she was a woman of color doing this. Mm-hmm. I'll be real, having to navigate spaces where you are the only and only in multiple categories, I can't even imagine. And how to, and I mean this in the best way, get white people who are scared of an empowered woman of color to vote for you. Yeah. It is a very hard thing. That doesn't excuse her voting record. That doesn't excuse anything she's done. It just contextualizes it where it's in the grand scheme of things, not great. Were people doing worse? Yes. But was she trying to break in? Yeah.
It is interesting that her big political breakthrough when she was elected district attorney in San Francisco. She ran, in many respects, to the right of this old guard lefty, old guard white lefty DA, who was supported by people like Nancy Pelosi and other old guard Democrats up there. So I mean, which just goes to prove, yes. Darn it, she is ambitious and she's smart and she knows some of the right openings and when to pour through them. I will say this quickly. One of the problems, the one downside, and the thing that actually just shows slightly the opposite of that, is she tried to make that same kind of calculation when she was running for president, and she ended up getting stuck between the progressive, Medicare for all lane and the other moderate, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar, and so she ended up neither betwixt nor between, and which is why she ultimately didn't make it to even the first primaries. Hopefully, in the future, that's a lesson she'll learn.
I think that's what's nice about her being on the ticket, though, because she can actually let the politician that she's proven herself to be in the Senate shine, and because she's in the number 2 position, it allows her to be that and be more liberal than Biden. And it's exciting.
It's certainly exciting. And one person who had a lot to say about it is the President of the United States, who as of this recording is still Donald John Trump, who
That's what I hear. That's what I hear.
who echoed.
Wait, the wrestler?
Yes, the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I read about
Yeah.
him.
You may have once seen him clock Vince McMahon at WrestleMania before he got
That's how he got the primary.
Stunner. That's what I say about a man who has access to the nuclear codes. You may remember when he punched someone at WrestleMania. Who at a press conference this week said he was surprised that Joe Biden picked her, called her, I believe, a nasty woman.
Several times.
Several times. And then echoed a already slightly in existence conspiracy suggesting that she would not be qualified to be president because her parents are both immigrants. So birtherism is back, huh?
That would be birtherism to Electric Boogaloo. So
very nice. Well, now episode title if we need it. Thanks.
I mean,
Allison,
racism is always in style with the United States. It never goes away.
Keep hoping it'll go out of fashion, and yet,
particularly after Labor Day.
Yeah.
Well, you're trying to say that we should not be wearing white after Labor Day.
I wanted to line up that pun for you, George. I was like, how do I just gift you something?
That was like an
Thank you, Brother Heaton. Thank you, Brother Heaton.
So that appears to be. I was stunned by their attacks on her. First of all, because they weren't particularly good, and it's been fairly obvious. I think that maybe not obvious. Maybe it wasn't like a slam dunk that she would be the nominee, but I think for a while now, I think it was in March that the last Democratic debate happened, where it was him and Sanders, where Biden publicly committed to picking a woman, and I think since then it was like, so it'll either be Kamala Harris or someone else, for since then. And yet they seemed kind of taken off guard by the announcement. I found interesting, like this Republican Party that our friend Oliver Willis Robert will quickly mention that while they are evil, we were at least like George W. Bush and Karl Rove, those guys, they knew how to drop some. They had their evil plans were ready to go. You couldn't beat them. His evil plans were ready to go. You couldn't beat them. Donald Trump, I think he keeps forgetting there's an election this year.
The problem with Donald Trump is he's evil. His being evil is bad, obviously, but his laziness and incompetence, even to basic politics, is just beyond the beyond. I mean,
he does not want to be president. I don't know how they're convincing him to do this again. It's so much hard work.
If they ever make a film about the Trump campaign, I feel like the entire soundtrack should be yakety sax from beginning to end.
Oh man!
Just to capture the competency of him.
Never enough yakety sax references.
I'll say this: you saying that, Heaton, gave me an anxiety attack, because hearing that for 4 years makes me want to dig a hole and fall in and go to sleep.
If there's one thing to make the Trump presidency even worse, 4 years of Trump, and then on top of that, 4 years of the Benny Hill soundtrack.
Yeah. And the movie.
And by the way, we're being very clear here that would be yakety sax. That would not be yakety blacks. So I mean, when we want to make that perfectly clear.
Oh, Robert. Oh, Robert.
Oh, Keisha. Oh,
Robert,
Keisha.
I love you. I love you. Sometimes I just want to reach out my hand.
I'm going to have to go with Keisha on this one. I look to her for guidance on these issues.
But my British background, I kind of grew up on Benny Hill too. So yeah.
All right.
I mean,
well, then never mind. And
I was going to say the thing that doesn't surprise me about Trump's announcement. He forgot about Black people. He was like, oh, they put a Black person on.
That's not fair. We agreed we weren't going to do that. I didn't do it. Why are you doing it?
One of those.
A whole other team.
He's just like, I just killed my Black friend. Damn it.
Who, by the way, came back as a Twitter ghost this week.
Did he shoot a brother on Fifth Avenue and nobody even noticed?
No, but he did make one go to a rally in Oklahoma and get COVID-19.
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course, exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't pay to be Black and no Trump. Just does not.
Not if you want a radio show on that network, that stupid conservative network that Herman Cain wanted to have a show on, and he had to go kiss Donald Trump's ass at his rally.
I
Yeah.
bet that Ben Carson has stopped hanging around with Trump for the last few months. I feel like
He's a
he's like,
doctor.
gotta go.
He's a doctor. He at least
Yeah,
knows
that's
he's like,
No, could you
gotta
come
be
He
over?
suddenly realized, wait, I am a brain surgeon. This would not be too smart. I am going to socially distance myself from the President of the United States at least
Yeah.
through November.
At least through January. Let's be honest.
By the way, I know we've been talking about Kamala Harris and Trump bringing back birtherism and all this other kind of stuff. We should take a little note here for everybody's favorite current vice president, who I believe is still Mike Pence.
Mike
And I
John
say
Pence, yes.
who I
wrestler?
believe is still Mike Pence, because given the fact that loyalty is always a one-way street in Donald Trump land, it's a couple of weeks away still until the Republican convention.
Yeah.
But you cannot dispel the possibility that he will throw Pence overboard if he feels it helps him politically. So it could end up being Nikki Haley on the ticket.
Yeah.
It could end up being Tim Scott. Talking about black
Are you
voters.
implying that the president of the United States has an erratic and self-serving personality type, George?
And make
Breaking.
shallow
Just
decisions?
and breaking. So just let's put that out there since we're
Do you
talking
think
talking about
Scott's
vice
turned
presidents
his
of color.
Do you think Tim
So-
Scott's turned his phone off at this point? It's just like, I mean, the Senate's on vacation. I assume Tim Scott is out in like a national park with his phone off, just wait it out. Not coming back.
Well, I mean, instead of all this silliness of Republicans trying to get Kanye West on these ballots and all this other kind of stuff,
Yeah, that is cool.
from a raw political perspective, putting Tim Scott on the Republican ticket could seriously do damage to some black support in some critical states. I mean, it's not. Look, all you need to do is it's not going to be a huge amount, but if Donald Trump last time got about 8% of the black vote, I would not be surprised if he gets somewhere in that 8 or the reversion to the mean for Republican presidential candidates is like 10 or 11%. If he put a Tim Scott on there and he expanded that vote to, I don't know, 13 or 15%, it's not much. But in a state like Michigan, taking some votes away out of Detroit, in a state like Pennsylvania, taking some votes out of Philadelphia.
Like to get a tiny bit conspiratorial here, if Kanye's actually still buddies with Trump, and Kanye actually does press a write-in campaign, and they told him, if you want to focus on these 3 or 4 states and just try and get black people to write in your name, like, he could do some damage.
Yeah, the thing is though, most of the states where Kanye could do damage to that area have already the what do you call them? The deadline. Excuse me, the deadline. The deadline for applying has already passed. In fact,
even for a write-in.
Yes, even for a write-in. I mean, in fact, that's even being litigated in Wisconsin right now, where one of Trump's Republican flunkies, rushed the petition in at 5:15, and the rules say the petitions have to be filed by 5 o'clock, and so the Kanye campaign is trying to say, oh well, if it's not quite 5:01, we get in, but
Allison, you were about to hop in.
Oh, I was gonna say I'm not really like worried about Kanye. My thing is like, are racist white women in the suburbs going to vote for Trump again, or are they just going to stay home because they're like mad at him? And I think that's what it's going to come down to again, whether they're motivated or not to support him.
I also think it's going to come down to people of color showing up and being able to show up and being able to vote, like at all.
Right. Like voter disenfranchisement, huge issue. But it always comes down to this like hand wringing over people of color, and at least in terms of the Democratic Party, people of color have been solid.
Yeah.
People who have been crossing over to vote for Trump are the upper middle class white women in the suburbs. But yeah, like voter disenfranchisement, huge issue, especially with what's happening with the post office right now.
Well, it's the upper middle class white women who abandoned the Republicans in the 2018 midterms, and so the question is, are they going to stick with the Democratic Party, or, as you said, stay home, or what have you? But Donald Trump has been an unmitigated disaster. The Republican Party used to be the party of the suburbs, and just like he has destroyed everything else, he's done that to the Republican Party in the suburbs. That's why places like Texas and Georgia are in play, because it's not just the growing demographic of Latinos and more Black people and so forth that is making those southern states in play. It is the fact that the suburbs, which have been solidly Republican going back 100 years, have now been turned off by Donald Trump.
And I will say this, this might be a controversial take, but if you are a white woman living in the suburbs and you vote for Donald Trump, your name is Karen to me. Your name has been canceled. You've been a Karen, and I'm sorry to all the Black Karens. White Karen should pay you reparations. You are a Karen, and I will knock on your door and tell you you are canceled to your face, because I am tired. I am trapped inside. I am more likely to die, and I'm tired. You, Karen. So that's my...
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here from Keisha. She is beyond Karen.
Nice. That was pretty good, Robert. Well done.
Well done.
The word was mentioned. The words voter disenfranchisement were mentioned. Let me tell you something. If you like voter disenfranchisement, this is the time to be alive. United States Post Office, as we speak, is, I guess, just like a room now in some federal office building in Washington. President Trump admitting on the record in an interview this week that he is holding up funding and delaying funding and in many ways defunding the post office out of a concern for too much mail-in voting, while also making the decision this week to apply for his absentee ballot so that he can mail in his vote.
He always says the quiet part loud. It's just like, he just fucking said it. Like, there's no debate.
For a guy, for a guy who has said something like, 20 or 50,000 lies since he became president, he's remarkably transparent.
He is. He's the id. He's the id run wild. Yeah.
He is wild. The only thing, he was like, we can't defund the police, but the post office that literally delivers people's medicine.
He hears
about the election.
Give them his badge.
He hears defund the post office. So that's what I heard. That's what I'm hearing.
We had good news late yesterday, though. Some good news late yesterday. A lot of, I believe, actual post office boxes were being actively taken out in Western states, and a group of Western senators, led by John Tester of Montana, sent letters and raised enough hell that was stopped.
It's really interesting because a lot of these areas are very rural communities and they're Republican. So a lot of Republicans actually are speaking out on this too, saying we have to defend the USPS because they know their constituents need it.
They get their medicine, they get their they get their checks, they get everything. What I enjoy is that John Tester, late yesterday, this was the Rachel Maddow show, I guess, reached out for him to be on the show, and he eventually was. But at first he couldn't do it because he was on his farm harvesting winter wheat, which
as you do.
By the way, I will tell you,
my favorite senator.
I think I may have told Tom this before. Donald Trump has radicalized me, and everybody knows. Look, everybody knows.
Oh, yeah.
Robert George,
Robert Antifa George,
mild mannered, temperamentally conservative guy, Republican background. Yeah, I have become radicalized. I have become an avid MSNBC watcher, and I have become like the biggest Rachel Maddow stan in the world. And look, I mean, look, I'm kind of gilding the lily here, but the fact is, Rachel Maddow probably works harder than just about any anchor on any cable news network. She basically does like a 20 or 25 minute deep dive at the top of her show every single. And she researches, and she was the person in that great period between when the pandemic was high in the Northeast, and so many of our friends and so many people in New York were getting it, and so forth. From that point to where we are, she was already focusing on what was going on in rural areas and these outbreaks in meat packing in Iowa and South Dakota and so forth. And for the last 2 weeks, she's been talking about some of the things that have been going on with respect to the post office, and she ends up getting these documents, like the letter saying, oh yeah, well, because of efficiency, we're cutting back on these hours, and we're closing this, and we're doing that, and people start saying, well wait a second, that's going to force us to leave some mail on the side because you don't want to pay us the overtime to make sure that these things get delivered. And they're saying, well, this is to save the budget of the post office. When that was complete and total bullshit.
That's what's so frustrating about all of this. This is a 100% man-made artificial crisis. Had Congress, Republican-controlled Congress in 2007, I think, not said to the USPS, you have to fund your pension plans and your healthcare plans 70 years into the future. If you did that to any company in the world, if they made Apple or Facebook do that, they would go bankrupt overnight. You can't ask someone to do that. There was no reason to ask them to do that. That's why we now have this budget crisis. That's not really a budget crisis. So it's completely an artificial crisis, which is just maddening.
And also, too, I think it's really...
Permission to irritate everybody again?
1 second, Robert, finish your point. Then Andrew can.
No, I will let Andrew.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Phone popped out for a second.
Yep, you're back.
Uh-oh, now I can't hear you. Oh no, keep talking, keep talking, Robert.
All right.
That's what happens when you try to irritate people on this show.
I'm sure he's going to come back. He's going to come back.
That's karma. That's karma, everybody.
I tell you, that's
for our listeners. We just lost Andrew Heat.
He couldn't stand. The heat is on, but he's not.
All right, I'll allow it.
So one of the reasons why I think it is somewhat important for Democrats who are holding people who are trying to hold Trump and Republicans accountable on this particular issue, is that while they do need like an influx of the post office does need an influx of 3.9 billion just as a quick stopgap. The crisis that is happening right now is not a crisis of financing. It is a crisis of intentional sabotage, where a former donor to the president fired the board of governors of the post office, put his own people in, and then decided to put through these new regulations that had absolutely nothing to do with the issue of efficiency. Forget about the mail balloting stuff. This is designed to damage the post office, create chaos, create a fear that individuals, if regular mail isn't going to be delivered, it is to create, that means that there's a fear that ballots will also not be delivered. That is what is going on here. So if Democrats, I'm going to paraphrase the President of the United States. Democrats, if you're listening, yes, talk about the mail ballot, the mail-in ballots, but make the point that the President of the United States, a handpicked crony of the President of the United States, is destroying the ability of the post office to deliver your prescription drugs, your checks, your Social Security payments. That is what should put everybody in the streets, whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Sorry, rant over.
Andrew, we have you back on the line. Please go ahead and irritate everyone.
We should privatize the post office.
Get out of here, you son of a...
Well, okay, so a couple of things here. The post, we all agree this is our best way to get catalogs we don't want. Well done, post office. For 50% of what it does is provide catalogs you immediately throw away. That's the main source of revenue for the post office is catalogs. That's why it's refused to do things that would make a ton of sense. Like
that's actually not true. Oftentimes they complete the route of UPS and FedEx when they can't complete the routes themselves.
What I'm saying is 50% of the things that they deliver are catalogs, and at least that's true as of 2016, unless the data's changed dramatically based on COVID or something. Correspondence is about 5%. I don't know how much medication is and that kind of thing. It's been like pre-Trump, it's been leaking money for a long time. It's got $129 billion in unfunded liabilities because it's got pensions. Unlike Allison, you brought up a minute ago, like Apple and things like that. They don't have pensions. They have 401.
Right. The United States Postal Service is not meant to function as a for-profit business. That's why it's
but it is. We've given it an impossible mandate. We've told it to operate as a for-profit business because we want it to be autonomously funded. So we don't treat it like a department of the government where it's funded by taxpayers. Unless it needs a bailout, then we do. It's lost about $50 billion over the last 20 years. And what we should do, in my opinion, is go with the crazy, evil, right-wing conservative countries of Belgium, Austria, Germany, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, all of which liberalized their post office. And we're putting them in a really difficult position because we say you need to operate as an autonomous for-profit business. But whenever you try to do that and you make rational decisions in terms of constricting your budget, Congress steps in and says you can't do it. So we've given them this mandate where we want them to function like the post office prior to free instantaneous communication. We want them to make money in that environment. Whenever they try and do it, we stop them from doing it. The only solution that's going to keep them afloat is to let them go.
I would argue my pushback to that is that take is inherently beneficial to the privileged because the U.S. Post Office does serve a lot of rural areas that privatized companies just don't go to. And you're really it's not just people of color. You're talking about people who are suffering economically. And when you do that, you're really silencing folks. And I think there has to be a conversation around, is that fair? And will we continue to have people suffer, especially now during a time when it is as simple as medicine, paychecks, and everything else. So I would push back that privatizing that system, and I think we have a lot of work to do to rethink how we structure the post office to make it sense as a government organization. I agree on that part, but I think it's inherently privileges certain people, and you're going to see a huge mountain of disparity for people who don't live in cities like all of us, who live in more rural communities, who getting a post office is important. I mean, I still think the post office should be able to cash checks because we live in a country, if you don't have a bank account, you are screwed. You're silenced. You're not able to participate. So I think there has to be a line drawn in the sand. And for me, it's the post office.
You know, I could
quick returns to that. You raise a good point. I don't believe that has been a problem in Austria, Belgium, the United Kingdom, or Germany that are doing exactly what I've proposed. They outsourced those options. They're, to my knowledge, nobody in rural areas or in low income areas is not able to get mail. I interrupt. Those are also significantly smaller nations. Those are nations that, like, let's talk about scale, right? When you talk about other social entitlements, they have much stronger systems where they're able to do that. So I think we have to have a conversation around
is that the best thing when we're letting people drown for less?
And
Sure,
also
but-
Andrew,
Yeah.
those many of those those nations don't necessarily have some of the liabilities that the U.S. Post Office has.
$129 billion worth of liabilities, all unfunded.
Which partly accrued, as Allison pointed out, because going into the mid 2000s, the post office's liability for pensions was somewhere in the neighborhood, and I realize I'm pulling this out of various body parts, but it's somewhere in the 10 to 20 billion dollar range. When the Republicans decided to reform it and basically pass a rule that no public or private other company had to follow. That's when the post office's finances just like started to spiral out of control. So you're at this 120 or 130 billion dollar liability statement. Now this was a they made a small problem where you could actually make this debate about maybe we should privatize, maybe we shouldn't, and they basically put what do you call it? Basically, concrete sneakers on them and said, jump in the water and swim.
Robert, what was the thing that they did? Because I missed that. What was the thing that increased the unfunded liabilities?
It basically said all what do you call them? All pension plans had to be pre-funded going ahead 50 to 75 years. I think it was. I think Allison mentioned
a good solution to that. I think would be for them to adopt what all private businesses do, which is 401ks. Whenever they try and do anything that interferes with the postal union, they get in trouble. So in 2013,
401ks are doing great right now. If you've talked to anybody who has a 401k,
when you look in 2013, the post office tried to do a partnership with Staples, where you could come in and you could buy all of your supplies, make your copies, and then send it through the post office. And it got scuttled because the postal union didn't want all of those jobs to go to Staples. And so whenever there are any actual innovations that happen, the whole thing gets scuttled. The other thing I'll add real quick is
I've never applied for a job at Staples. I'll just tell you, it's not a great place to work.
I mean, like, I assume you guys are all against monopolies, right? Like, I'm against monopolies. I would imagine this is an anti-monopoly panel here.
I would push back. It depends on if it's a necessity for life and existence in the world. I do believe that maybe we should talk about a monopoly around Wi-Fi.
Oh my God, single pair Wi-Fi? Yeah, cool.
It has to do with the number of people who don't have access, and I think we as a country are on the verge of going to the dark ages. Remember, literacy is lost in one generation.
So when I say monopoly, though, you would want to abolish private Wi-Fi?
I think it's worth having a conversation.
But not publicly funded, but abolish all the private stuff too.
No. I'm talking about having a base utility.
Okay, well, fair enough, but it wouldn't be a monopoly, though, because a monopoly would be you can only do one thing.
It wouldn't be an exclusive monopoly, but I think it would have to be a conversation.
But that is what the post office is an exclusive monopoly on letter delivery. There's a loophole where you can deliver things if they're express at $3 or higher, or at least double first-rate postage. But if any one of you tried to develop your own company to deliver mail in your town or something, it would be illegal according to federal law. And I think a good step we could do is get rid of that monopoly and then see if the private sector can handle all the rural areas. But at least stop that monopoly and open it up.
Well, one concern I would have, and this is actually a great discussion, Andrew. I don't know if we'll be able to, how long we can pursue
my goal is to unhinge the entire show. And
I know it's.
Look, we only have 3 days left of Zoom time to talk. So,
I think one of the concerns we have is that in the late 1970s and early 1980s. When the airline industry was deregulated, and that actually started under Carter.
Carter was a liberalizing force.
And accelerated under Reagan. Some good things came about from that. The downside though is if you're in a rural area, getting from point A to point B in terms of flying is difficult. Is problematic. It's a lot harder now than it was 35 or 40 years ago. So my point is I even though some of my libertarian sensibilities have faded over the last handful of years, I agree with you that Congress should definitely have a much lighter hand on some of the mini privatization efforts, or at least the thinking outside of the box solutions that have come in to ease the post office's financial burden. Absolutely agree with you there. Whether completely privatization is the answer is I'm not quite ready to go there yet.
You're not ready to go European. Everybody wants to stay traditionalist. Right. I get that, but I'm going to be European liberal on this one.
Well, can we do a trade-off? Can we go for I don't know, the Scandinavian health model, and the Scandinavian mail model?
I don't know what the Scandinavian mail model is. What's that?
Let me rephrase
Hey,
that.
man. There's one thing Robert George loves: Scandinavian mail models.
I give up. I surrender. I just completely owned myself there.
To the political side of this, what can be done to stop these transparent machinations to kneecap the post office, as our former President Barack Obama said?
Number one, Nancy Pelosi needs to call the House back to Washington today.
For so many reasons. For so many reasons, but particularly
I like that brought a leftist and a Republican together on that. Nothing like a Democrat to piss off the left and the right.
If the Democrats are correct, and I think they are, that what is happening to the post office is absolutely outrageous and intolerable. They right now are focusing on the funding issue. As I said before, it's not just you could get that infusion of $4 to $25 billion, whatever it is, into the post office. You could get that in, within a week or two, if the person running it has gone so far as to shut the sorting machines down, try to remove all the post office, changed all these work rules so that the mail that was supposed to go out on a daily basis is sitting on the floor for two or 3 days. The fact that the system suddenly gets 25 billion isn't going to do anything if those rules are still in place. So you need to get Congress back in there. You need to have hearings. Carolyn Maloney, who is the head of the Government Oversight Committee, she said, "Well, I've called the Postmaster General to come in and listen to our questions on September 17th. That's a month from now. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean,
what? Is she in the room with you? You're real mad about this.
No, this is absurd.
Howard's passionate about the post office, and I applaud that.
And mail models. I'm sorry, Allison. I wasn't sure if you were about to also jump in on other things that can be done.
No, I was just passionately listening.
Okay, fair enough. Call your reps, if nothing else. 202-224-3141 for the Senate. So I think, don't worry though, good news for all of us anxious about things, as Robert alluded to, with the world on the brink, and with the post office undermined, with rising COVID-19, with all sorts of good, terrible stuff happening. Don't worry, Congress is on summer vacation again.
They did it, everybody. They went on vacation.
With that, I think we're going to call it a show. Thank you so much, panel. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Allison Kilkenny, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha Zoller, for joining us.
Seriously, stay safe. Think about someone you love and say a nice thing.
Absolutely. Oh man, nice things. Real quick. It's a real nice day today. All right, did it. Andrew,
Astronomy Club is must-see
yes,
TV.
That too. All right, that was way better. Robert's better than me at this.
I love you, Robert. I take back every mean thing. A little bit.
Andrew Heaton, thank you for joining us and for irritating us with your belief in European
Thank you.
privatization.
And given my deviant beliefs, I want to compliment both Tom for assembling this motley crew, and I want to compliment everybody here. I think it's truly wonderful that that we were able to have a conversation that was all goodwill, where everybody came in. Nobody was doing any character attacks. It speaks highly of the moral timbre and intelligence of everybody here, and it was really fun talking to you.
Well, I was specifically told I couldn't attack anybody's character.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Tom. Tom,
Yeah.
I appreciate
Thank
you
you, Tom.
preemptively telling Allison not to make fun of me.
Hey, yeah, no problem.
Fair.
I was like, Andrew's very sensitive as well.
He will fall
Andrew's single.
apart.
It really bothers him.
You'll
This
see
is all
why.
he has all
Yeah.
week.
He believes
The only
UPS
reason
should be
he's
allowed to
shaved
look
in front
through
of a
all of
shirt.
our mail. All that stuff.
When we're done, I'm just going to go eat Oreos in the bathtub out of a bowl with a ladle. That's my life when I'm through talking to all of you.
Oh, wow. Sounds like a good life. And thank you, Robert George, for being here and for being the nice guy of politics.
Thank you, Tom. Always. Thank you. And once again, we don't say this enough. Andrew kind of hinted at it, but I have been very fortunate enough to be the partner in crime with Tom Brennan for about a dozen years right now, since we helped create this little insanity called electoral dysfunction, and it's always been a valuable entity, but never more so than in the 6 months or so that we've had this pandemic issue. So thank you for helping continue a real safe space for some fun, tough conversation, but hilarious conversation and great people. So thank you, my friend.
You're welcome. And that means I forgot to tell you guys at the top, this was our 25th show. So we did it, guys. 25 of these. Don't worry, I haven't recorded the opening yet, so I'll do it in that. And
We're capped.
with that, we get down to the 25th show. I want to say also a very quick thank you to our friends Daryl, Charles, and James Heskey, aka the Layoff Kids, for our opening sketch. Thank you very much to Declan Shalvey and Jordy Belair for the Electoral Dysfunction Eagle Art. Thank you to Kevin Scott for the Electoral Dysfunction Animation. Thank you to Joanne Harris for our theme music. And thank you to Ned Thorne for helping me put these together every single week. And now on that note, we're going to throw things down to Houston, Texas for this week's musical guest, Doug Starwipe, aka Doug Ankenman, my brother-in-law, terrific musician. And may I just say to him and Caroline Brennan, travel safe. We're really excited to see you up here soon. Ned Thorne, Starwipe us to Texas.
Good evening. I've got another one for you. Hope you enjoy it. It's a long way down. I just can't outrun these hounds. You trespassed on my sacred ground, and now you must go down. 'Cause I've got darkness and light. Here come the armies of the night. 'Cause I've got darkness and doom. Don't you make it come too soon. Lord knows it's a long way through. I just can't outrun these fumes. You broke my boundaries, you broke my rules. Now I gotta take you back to school. 'Cause I got darkness and light. And here come the armies of the night. 'Cause I've got dark to consume. Don't you leave too soon. Lord knows it's a long way down. I just can't outrun this town. I don't know where to run to now. I've gotta find the light somehow. 'Cause I got dark